Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Coffee Show Wednesday edition, brought to you by Reckless Coffee Roasters. I did not even try, Gordon, to copy Timucin's very happy good morning because, as they say, as we talking about transitioning from Arnie Slot, from Jurgen Klopp to Arnie Slot, we gotta I gotta make my own mark. Gotta make it different, right? So kind of going on the Timucin route of saying good morning kind of makes me have a little bit of that kind of syndrome. So we're just starting it our way now. Good morning, everyone. It's myself, John, with Gordo here. As you all know, Timucin is on holiday, so we'll be holding the fort down here in the Wednesday show. For the meantime, Gordo, what's happening? As Tim would say, second best dad, but since he's not here,
I guess I'm the first.
Right. The absolute, undisputed greatest dad. What's happening?
While you are trying to emulate Timucin, I almost pulled an Anon just now. I was very close to. Missing the beginning of the show, so I just made it.
No, you made it just in time when I was setting up the intro. So, Anon's like 2-3 minutes after the intro goes. It's usually Timucin and I here, then he appears. So you're still pretty much good out of the reckless label there. Cersei says good morning 4 minutes earlier than usual. Of course, it's Cersei's way of saying, hey, where the hell are you guys?
That's my alarm clock.
Right. Alan says good morning, Alan. Slot's first press conference tomorrow. Absolutely, that's definitely something to look forward to, and hopefully the Thursday guys. I did not catch it. Are the Thursday guys going to be on tomorrow? I think they are. So tune into that to see the reaction for that. There's probably a milestone here, seeing someone other than Big Jurgen on the mic. And here he is, Timucin. It is Turkey. Dang it, Gordo. And speaking of Timucin, hope he's all right constitution-wise after that finish from Turkey yesterday. Ooh. What a save from that goalie. I didn't watch the game personally, but yeah, we'll get into it a little bit. But of course, let me just get the housekeeping here in order. Shameless plug, everyone. If you haven't already, please subscribe and like and do all that stuff. As you can see here, the channel just reached 800 subscribers, and we're really proud of that. Kind of doubled since last year, and the goal is to get to 1,000. Slow and steady. We're getting there, but to everyone who's subscribed, who's liked our videos and has commented, taken the time to comment it, we really appreciate it. You guys are the lifeblood that keeps American Scouser going alongside our friends at Reckless Coffee Roasters, who, by the way, I'm enjoying a cup of right now. It's not seen because I do not have a green screen. But yeah, Gordo, it's been on that segue. Let's using Turkey as a segue. Turkey. I'm trying to pronounce it right because I know Tim isn't here, but he'd probably butcher my ass if I pronounce it wrong every time. Right. On that subject, very interesting stretch in the Euros over the last few days. Yeah, and listen, I haven't tuned into every game. I was fortunate enough to watch some of the Netherlands Romania game yesterday throughout my break at work. But obviously here we got the bracket. Is there any way to? Well, this kind of puts us away from the screen, but it makes it bigger for everyone to see. Which matchup in the round of 16 probably stood out to you most, because I know you're probably more locked into this than I am.
Yeah, the Turkey game. I mean, that game was, as a fan, like as a neutral fan, you probably get maybe 5 or 6 of these types of games where for 90 plus minutes, what it ended up being 95 minutes. So we'll say around 100 minutes. It's basically perfect, like just beautiful football.
Right.
From first whistle to last. Literally, it's a 57-second goal and a 95th minute world-class save. Those two events bookend the game. And I think it's definitely one of the games of the tournament. And I forget who said it. I think it might have been Sparky in the group chat on Discord. And if you're, again, another shameless plug, I'll fill in for Timucin here. If you're not in Discord, definitely get in there and get involved in all the banter. But I think it was Sparky. He was saying about they have 2 or 3 best teams. And one, it's just that one definitely stood out for me.
Yeah, I mean, I caught some of the England game, and not to make this the England, the American England, team podcast or whatever, but you can't talk about the Euros without talking about England's performance last weekend. It's oh man, how does he keep getting away with this, Gordo? How does he keep getting away with this? Like, if we're talking about nailed on, finally writing on the wall kind of deal, Gareth Southgate looking like ominously from the sideline. It looked over. It really did. But Jude Bellingham, being the world-class player that he is, just comes out and then just carries the team, drags them out of the mud, and Harry Kane does the rest. But how I know people have been divided in terms of how they see Gareth Southgate, right? In terms of the pragmatic side of the game, he has kind of put England into positions where they haven't been before, even with arguably a less talented squad than, let's say, the golden generation, making the finals of the Euros, making semifinals of the World Cup. That's pretty much where you think England would be. But then if you're talking about the aesthetic side of the game, and everyone in the comments, feel free to chime into this, what you guys feel about, Southgate at the helm, it doesn't look good. Like, it does not look good at all. But at the end of the day, right, we always say, if you get those 3 points, if you go through, that's what matters. So where are you on that balance, Gordo? Are you on that knife's edge, or are you leaning towards a little bit more? Because you did get away with it, right?
Yeah, so group stage comes through, and I'm thinking, if they get past Slovakia, they're going to get battered by the Swiss, because the Swiss have managed to score a lot of goals in this tournament. They're not shy in front of the net. They are playing a style much like the game we saw yesterday, where like I don't think they care if they give up 2 goals, because they're going to score 3. It's like very early Klopp, where it's just like 3 shoots to the wind. It reminds me a lot of like Brendan Rodgers too, where it's just like they may score 3, but we're going to score 4. And England just haven't been able to produce enough goals. So I was like, I'm not seeing it. But the way that England won that game and how inept the team has looked for 4 games, it has me in this weird state where I just feel like, and I said it in the Discord again yesterday, they're going to Inspector Caluso their way into the final. Just like, oops, very much.
Like, we're here. Yeah. Oh, we're here, right? Like
Crouchy scoring the bike. It's just like, that shouldn't happen, but it did.
Right. So imagine. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I just have a feeling that they're going to stumble their way in one way or another. But the funniest thing I think that happened in that game was Ivan Toney comes on in like the 95th minute or something, and my dad literally texts me and goes, "Oh, we're fine. I bet he bet we're going to win." And
I mean, based on his performance, how much of a difference he made, it pretty much looked like he put some money on the team, isn't it? And
yeah,
I don't know, Gordo. Like, we know that this team has the players.
Mm-hmm.
They have a really good mix of talent who actually try their best to get along, right? Unlike previous generations. So the chemistry is there. Do you think what transpired during that last game kind of gave Southgate the incentive to actually be a bit more open? Because obviously, if you're looking at it from a common sense perspective, Plan A didn't work. It did not work. Backs against the wall stuff to get out of that, portion of the tournament. So he kind of just told them, "All right, guys, you know what? Whatever, just go all out." And it worked to perfection. They looked more dangerous. More patterns of play were being developed. Sorry, Sparky says here that Southgate is playing the perfect tactics, boring the shit out of the opposition. Well, I mean, that was Plan A, and Plan A didn't work. So yeah, back to the question, I guess, Gordon. Is this enough of an incentive for him to actually start trying to find the potential from these guys, as talented as the squad is?
I think, to me, it's telling that he pulled some of his biggest guys off. It's Kane that scores the winner. So because that one's been bothering me the most. He just hasn't, the team isn't really set up to play with Harry Kane. And yes, he'll score your goals. And of course, I agree. I think Sparky said it's a false dawn. No, Sergi says it's a false dawn. And I think it is. It's kind of, they stumbled into the win. And a bad manager will take that as like, oh, I brought on the right subs and I left on the right people. And, Harry Kane plays all 120 minutes and he scores the goal and he wins the game for us. And I made a substitution who made an instant impact. But how many substitutions has Gareth Southgate made after the 80th minute?
Yeah.
It's just in games they need to find results. He's holding off until like the 80th minute. And with the team, like they're up against the Swiss, who have been so free scoring in this tournament, I see that being far too late. I think it was who came on in the Denmark game, and it was like 85 minutes. It's like, what is he going to do with 5 minutes? And I don't know. His tactics are definitely all wrong. I think it's the Slovakian team just wasn't good enough to last the distance, and they kind of ran out of steam because they had to play England's at such a high level. And maybe that's how they get out of games, is there is so much quality there. The teams do need to put in like a perfect 90 minutes so that they don't give up a goal.
Absolutely. And obviously we can't talk about England without talking about Trent, who did not see a minute on the pitch last game. Do you think that actually works for us, Gordon? Like, obviously I was talking with some of my friends who are fans of different clubs. They should be. They were like, you should be happy. Like, he clearly doesn't fancy Trent, and you know what? It is what it is. At least we're going to be preserving him for the season if we're going to be making a deep run. But then on the other side, on the flip side of it, you see kind of Cody Gakpo and Darwin Nunez kind of lighting everything on fire, with their play, with their respective international teams. And you go like, hey, at least they have, a platform to bring in to next season. I mean, I guess the question, what I'm trying to drive at with this is, do you think it matters that Trent isn't getting any game time here in terms of how we're going to be seeing him play next year, obviously with a new system and the new manager? Sparky going the pragmatic route here, leave all Liverpool players on the bench. I agree to an extent, but what do you think, Gordon?
So for the individual, we're looking at like Cody Gakpo having a great tournament. We're looking at Darwin Nunez doing a lot for Uruguay. And like those kind of players, and that's always good for their confidence levels, and you hope that they carry that into the season. Now, it's only a hope because international play does not equal club play. We've seen that so many times where a player goes off for their national team and doesn't do anything, is pretty inept with their clubs. But there is always the hope that like form is contagious and you keep going because you have that high level of confidence. And so for the individual, I want him to play. However, he's been played out of position. It's kind of a position that I think a lot of Liverpool fans want to see him play in a Liverpool shirt. However, it's not working for England. And I thought they were going to lose that game just because like the first 25, 30 minutes, it was like all Slovakia. And I was like, you know what? I'm glad he's on the bench because they won't use him as a scapegoat, because even though he's been one of the most creative players in an England shirt, he's been one of the targets of like, oh, he's not doing enough. He looks way out of his depth. And it's just like, I don't want him out there if they're going to lose a winnable game and be the guy that everyone circles when you've got like Harry Kane up there, Golden Boot winner for the Bundesliga, not scoring goals in the tournament. So it was like a mixed bag, really, for me. I want him out there and doing well because I want the form to carry over, but I don't want him out there if people are just going to circle him as an excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just ridiculous if you see some of the criticism, like Trent out of his depth. You mean to tell me Premier League winner, multiple-time Champions League final playing Champions League winner is out of his depth playing under a manager who is probably, if we're talking about stature, probably should be managing a championship club. Mathieu said mentally it can matter for Trent. He wants to play. Yeah, I mean, I can pretty much understand Trent not being too happy. I mean, but then that can also work for us where he has kind of a chip on his shoulder coming into next year, trying to prove himself like, hey, this is the player that you guys didn't give a chance on at the tournament, or you pulled me out too early. Us Trent to midfield enthusiasts like myself, it hasn't been really good for us, but then it's such a bad situation where even people who don't want Trent to play in midfield would go like, this isn't a fair situation to judge him in, right? Timucin says against teams like Serbia, Slovakia, Trent should start at right back. Yes, pushing that Trent at right back agenda. Tim, I see you there. You are not hiding. I see you there. You do not need his D on those games that can be taken way out of context. But okay,
we always need Trent's D. Okay.
Right. It's always going to be Trent's D. That's going to be the point of discussion here. So, yeah. Before we move on from England, again, not to make this the England podcast, Gord, how do you realistically see them playing against the Swiss? Do you think that their luck is finally going to run out? Because as I think it was Brian who mentioned that they have a pretty clear path to the final if they are to get through their hurdles. Like, obviously, we're going to get into it a little bit. That other side of the bracket is absolutely insane.
Stacked.
Right. And you got England over here just lying around there, like, sitting pretty, facing supposedly lesser teams. But yeah, how do you see them? Do you think that the shouts, Gordo, of them making the final, considering everything that they've played, every game that they've played, looking not really convincing, is it realistic, or is it just hopeless, misjudged optimism, if you will?
It's always misjudged optimism with England. It always is, because they get I said it before last week, the Serbia game, they got by the skin of their teeth. It looked pretty inept. It was bad. They really weren't clicking on all cylinders, but you can give them the pass. They get the 3 points. It's the first game of a tournament, and you hope that they come back with a different tactic. Southgate makes no changes against Denmark, and of course they tie that game. And then you're thinking, okay, now he's got to realize that it just wasn't that it was the first game of the tournament. It's that those tactics didn't work. They played a better team. They end up tying. Mm-hmm. They play Slovenia. It's the same tactics. I think he makes 3 or 4 changes, which in my opinion isn't enough after watching 2 games. Same result, 0-0. Don't score. Extremely inept. They've gone out of the group stage scoring 2 goals, and they win the group, which is insane to think about. And then they play Slovakia. They get totally overrun in the first 30 minutes. It's almost the same tactics. And you're just thinking, like, when is he going to wake up? I don't see him changing his tactic. It doesn't look like. We're 4 games in. We've seen the same thing. We barely escaped by the skin of the teeth with the Slovakia game, needing extra time. And then you look at somebody like the Dutch, who had a tough group. Probably the first 2 games weren't the greatest, and the fans definitely in media let them know, but they switched their tactics. Yes, they played Romania, but I would say Romania was better than Slovakia in the group stages. Mm-hmm. And they easily beat them 3-0. It was a brilliant Dutch performance. Tactics were changed, positions were rotated, and that's the kind of change that I was looking for in England and I didn't see. So I'm not confident. However, there just is that X factor that I just feel like it's just going to be. And Southgate just has he's the perfect personality to be like, oops, here we are in the final.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be just on brand for Southgate to klutz himself to the final? But yeah, you touched on that Netherlands performance yesterday. It was pretty vintage in terms of Dutch football, silky smooth, dominating possession, and a good result for our boys there, Cody and Virgil, which we're going to get into. But it's a shame Tim isn't here, because the Turkey game was pretty insane, as we kind of touched in at the start of the show. And Sir Z is saying that England wouldn't get past the Netherlands or Turkey if they beat Switzerland, which, listen, like, whoever that would be on that side of the bracket, we probably wouldn't fancy England as well. Netherlands looked phenomenal yesterday. Right. Hopefully more of the same, because, like I said last week's show, I don't really have a horse in this, but if I'm going to be choosing, I'd probably go for the Dutch team. Primarily for Virgil's legacy. I'd love him to win one of these tournaments, kind of putting him, in that conversation as, like, valid conversation as one of the best, CBs ever. But before we move on, Gordo, it's different topics. That other side of the bracket that I keep saying, that is just
scary.
Yeah, that's just scary. And, like, isn't it a shame that Spain and Germany are going to be facing off so early? Like, I don't know, man. Like, no offense to the believers out there, but this is the kind of thing that makes me believe there's no God in this world. That you're going to be putting these 2 guys, these excellent teams, in the quarterfinal stage. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm. Like, unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But I guess the other matchup is kind of slept on, though, isn't it? Like, what do you think about the Portugal-France matchup?
Yeah, because the French national, another situation where I feel like they really haven't changed their tactics and kind of fell into where they're at currently, much
Right.
like England. And like Portugal is a good team. As much as I hate to admit it, they're a good team. They can get results. They score goals. They also needed extra time and penalties for that game. And so they're going to be a little. I know they don't play until Sunday, right? Or they play, or sorry, Saturday, or they Friday the game.
Let me see here. It's on Friday, the 3 p.m.
Okay.
game. Yeah.
So they've got a little bit of rest. They've got a couple of days of rest, so they might recover from that. But that one is like a historical match, right? Like they're both good teams. They both have good lineups, so it should be a good match. But they're just two teams that are not. They haven't really shown much in the tournament. Whereas like that other matchup are like two of the most informed teams in the tournament for the last 4 games, and so it still doesn't make the Portugal-France game any less exciting, in my opinion, and it doesn't make the semifinal for either Spain or Germany any easier. So it's a very difficult side for sure. I mean, when you look at the other side, even in the beginning, I mean, Denmark, Slovakia, Romania, it's like
Right.
not a really strong side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Serzi here, Serzi, come on! It's almost the holiday weekend. Everyone's a good vibe. You don't have to put that out there and make fun of him. To answer your question, he hasn't played a minute. No, he hasn't.
Neither is Gomez though, and I love him so.
Right. And to be fair, as much as I want to see Ryan get on that bike and get come into the season very confident and everything, it is what it is. Tim here saying Turkey is not getting past the Netherlands, but I guess you never know. Did not think that they would beat an Austria team playing some of their best football in the Euros. So that's the Timucin I know, the pragmatic Timucin, the one who's always thinking negatively. But hey, you'll never know. Like as Sir Z said in a comment before, like the desire, and sometimes that is enough to win these one-off games. I wouldn't put it past them. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually get through. Sparky says, yeah, always harder games in the Euros and the World Cup. You were saying something, Gordon?
No, it's just with that Turkey Netherlands game is going to be another. I think one of the best. I think they will have the 3 best games in the tournament, and definitely 4 of the top 5. I'm saying because that one looks to be. I mean, based on form, like current form, I think that is the one to circle. Besides that Spain-Germany game,
right? And going back to Portugal, Gordo, like how much? Okay, and it's good that this is a Liverpool podcast, right? Because if this was a purely football/soccer podcast, you'd have this fan base coming over at our throats in droves, right?
Yeah,
I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
you know where I'm going with this. But how much is a certain number 7 holding Portugal back in terms of them finally unlocking their team play, building on the chemistry of their younger guys? How much is Cristiano Ronaldo holding them back in terms of like hugging the ball on a free kick, even though he hasn't scored one since 2005?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
How big do you think that is? Like, or is it overstated? You think?
I think we're the wrong fan base to ask because we're.
I mean, let's try and put on your objective cap as best you can. That's all I can ask.
Slightly biased, just slightly biased, because there was like nothing better than him missing that penalty and being like, "Oh, they might go out, and it might be Ronaldo's fault." Not just that he was on the team that lost, but like it's definitely his fault that they lose. And there was like nothing that made me happier. But yeah, there is a little bit of that, right? Because he is. Still one of the top players in the world. He still is probably healthier and fitter than a lot of people in their mid-20s. He definitely takes care of his body.
Absolutely.
But he did turn his back on like European football to make a money move, which doesn't sit well. Even if you liked him, it doesn't sit well. Like Henderson does it. I think everyone loved Henderson, and he did it, and it's like, that just doesn't sit right with me. So you kind of want him to fail. He's a great villain, like, right? So like you enjoy hating him. It's much like Mayweather with boxing. I don't know if you're into boxing, but like he built his foundation on being the bad guy, and that's how he sold all his tickets because everybody wants to see him get his ass kicked, and he wouldn't get his ass kicked. He never did, but like that's why you bought the fights because you were hoping to watch him get beat.
Right.
And I see Ronaldo like that, and there is a sense of that, but like every once in a while you do need you're like an old veteran that's been in many tournaments, and he's won Euros with Portugal, so like he knows how to get to the final. And he's Ronaldo in Portugal. Like these kids, I don't think they see it as that. Like this is their chance to play with him, to be on the same team, to train with him. Like he's a god over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a different approach when you look at it as like a Portuguese fan. And so I won't say that he's probably holding the team back a little bit, because I do feel like this tournament is more like rage filled, because I really do think that he's the kind of guy that like watches Messi all the time, like looks at his results, find out what he's doing. Like I feel like he probably has one of those voodoo boards with Messi on it, and does some sage every once in a while to hope he has a bad game. And I'm thinking that he's looking over his shoulder and thinking Argentina wins the Copa and then does a Spain basically and wins Copa, Euro, World Cup, Copa. And like this is a vendetta filled Euros for Ronaldo, which is the wrong approach in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, but then it's pretty on brand for him to think like that, though, isn't it? Like Sir Z saying here, Ronaldo holds the team back like Kane holds the England team back, but the difference is he's actually, like you said, he's won the Euros, he's won the Nations League. So there is actually that goodwill, backing the wind on his sails. Matouche, no argument there. The rest of the team is unlikable. It's tough to say anything good about the team. Like even Jota, like I feel like he's the kind of player that we'd absolutely despise if he played against us, but we're lucky enough he plays for us. So there is that. So yeah, let's listen, like we could spend an hour here talking about the Euros show. But this isn't the Euros show. This is the American Scouser podcast. So we're actually going to try and move into a Liverpool, focused, player here. Gakpo's numbers yesterday against Romania, 29 touches, all that jazz, 1 goal, 1 assist, clearly the best player on the pitch. And I swear this isn't me trying to fuel an agenda, like a part of our big conversation last year. But since then, Gakpo has just gone from strength to strength, kind of building on his great play last year towards the end of last season, and he's kind of excelling in that left wing position, Gordon. Obviously, people are going to like Diaz, people are going to like Gakpo, people are going to have their preferences, but at this point, obviously, like you said, international play does not necessarily equate to club play, but in terms of this Gakpo situation in isolation, how big is this great run of form for his chances on the Liverpool side of things, you think?
I think it's enormous because, like I said last week, and it carried on this week, he is eclipsing the guy that he is playing to basically play second fiddle to in Memphis Depay. And I don't know if that's a media filled, because I don't like, Dutch football. I'm not like following every single player, but I do know that like Memphis was the guy that they were looking for, and he's not really had a great tournament so far. Mm-hmm. And Gakpo was supposed to come in as that like supplier, right? He's not really a goal scorer. He's more of a playmaker. He's somebody that supplies crosses. He holds the ball up really well. And so he was kind of brought in, and basically everyone in that team in an attacking position is brought in to kind of feed the ball to Memphis. And you saw it in the game one. That was the game plan. Everything went to Memphis Depay, everything. And he just isn't finishing well. He's not holding the ball well. He's running into cul-de-sacs. He's losing it really easily. And Cody Gakpo is outshining him, and he's eclipsing the guy that he was basically like the system is set up for him to supply Memphis, and he's doing much better than him. And I think so that factored with the form to me is like a double win for Gakpo, and that's got to do a world of confidence, because I think you'll see in this next game that they'll start focusing a little bit more on him in terms of like developing his play, because in spite of Memphis Depay, he has excelled. And I really feel like if they had set up to be more like distributing the ball throughout the three forwards, that Gakpo probably would have scored one or two more goals in the first game, because there was a couple of wayward shots from Memphis Depay that if Gakpo had crashed the net, he would have had a tap in at the back. But like the team wasn't set up for that. So I think you'll see the systems change a little bit. I think you'll see him get a little bit more freedom. And if he gets that freedom and continues to shine, I mean, even if it doesn't fully translate into a Liverpool shirt because the system's different, the confidence is up. And that's only a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you see him do his trademark, it's just so weird, right? And we're going to get into this in a sec in terms of how Klopp used him like last season. if we're looking at him cutting to his right and lashing out a shot, it seems like a very basic move, but it's his bread and butter, and he does it infinitely better than Luis Diaz, where it just makes me wonder, and I guess we're going to get into it, right? Not to speak ill will of the man because we owe him everything, right? But I guess looking at how Gakpo is used now, right? And Sparky kind of hits the point here where Gakpo is doing well. No, sorry, it's not this comment. Let me find that one here. There we go. Easier to play in the Dutch team than Liverpool. And that is a great point. That is an excellent point. But then Klopp didn't do him any favors last year, Gordo, in terms of playing him as an 8, playing him as a false 9, sometimes playing him on the right wing. But then in terms of his natural position on the left wing, he kind of had to jostle a little bit with Luis Diaz, with Darwin Nunez, and even Diogo Jota at times for that position. So I guess my question is, and we've got actually some evidence, to kind of back up this claim, because if we look at the 7-0 game against Man United, he started on the left.
Mm-hmm.
That move where he cuts in and just smokes Rafael Varane and just lashes it in the top corner for 1-0, the bottom corner rather, for 1-0. Like, this is just Gakpo on the left at his best. And it's just really surprising. Like, what do you think went into, the thinking with Klopp? Do you think it's like kind of like, oh, he does a lot of things well, like to your point last year where Gakpo being a great all-around player, his overall game is pretty polished to the fact that Klopp can deploy him into more of a different role while he has like exclusive specialists like Diaz on that left side, perform the role? Do you see it like that? Or do you think he was just simply, I hate to say it, but do you think he was just simply mismanaged by the team last year?
No, because again, the system is totally different. And Klopp requires his wingers to basically kill themselves on the field, coming back, like playing defensively,
Right.
even overlapping at times with Trent and Robertson. And in a situation where like Robertson was pretty much out for most of the season, you can't have your left wing when they're supposed to be tracking back, not tracking back. And that might have been frustrating for Klopp. And I said it maybe like a month or so ago, like I think it might have been before the tournament started, but like Gakpo has that look and feel and the calmness on the ball that makes me want to just squeeze him into the center forward role, like just like a classic like Emil Heskey type player, like just fantastic with his back to goal, good at distributing the ball. The play like slows down when the ball's at his foot. He makes good decisions. I just don't think he's just one of those anomalies, like just basically like a 7-foot-tall 3-point shooter, if I'm going to use a basketball reference. Like it kind of doesn't fit the mold of what we'd expect a player of his stature and his quality to play. And I think that it's not so much mismanaged. I just think that the system called for, he's a great player, so Klopp doesn't want to drop him, but he doesn't track back, which the system calls for. So where do you put a guy like him? Obvious is in the center. It just didn't work out the way that we want. And like him and Diaz are totally different players in the sense that we talked about this a little bit last week too, where you're right. Gakpo looks to cut in before the 18-yard box. Diaz looks to get to the line like every single time. Yeah. And that works much better for the Liverpool system as well. Is like bring everybody up and kind of overwhelm the center, bring the ball all the way to the touchline, cross it back kind of away from the goalie, and then crash the box for something in the middle. So, and if you have somebody like Gakpo, somebody as tall and as strong as Gakpo in the middle, you're hoping that he's got a bunch of easy headers from Diaz, but it just didn't work out. I just think he's an anomaly type of player.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, obviously not to turn this into the Luis Diaz hate show. For everyone who might think that I'm hating on the man, I love Luis Diaz. Yeah, he's a great player. It's just, we got to have these conversations. One, for the sake of content. And two, what we expect next year, which is still a bit of a mystery, which is why it's great that, Adonai is going on the mic tomorrow to kind of give us a bit of his intentions. Cersei said Diaz has had a good tournament too. Yes, I'm hearing that as well. If Salah leaves and Diaz stays, I would play Diaz on the right.
100%.
Right. Sparky says here that that's what squad rotation is about. My problem with Gakpo is lack of effort. Right. All valid points as well, because, Gakpo gives kind of that Virgil vibe, Gordo, where he's just so calm. He just doesn't look bothered. I don't know if that's a Dutch thing. Like I get that a bit with Gravenberch as well, where like he seems just so silky smooth and calm, where if things aren't going your way, you're just like, what the fuck are you doing? Do something, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, that can be a bit antithetical to the Klopp system, where you got guys like Mane and Diaz on that left wing, kind of to your point, tracking back and helping the left back harass a defender. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. But where do you stand on that in terms of Gakpo looking relaxed? Like, this is an extension of VVD, I would say, but then VVD has all the goodwill, where you would say, like, even though he looks relaxed, you know he's gonna get shit done.
Yeah.
Gakpo doesn't have that goodwill as much yet. So how do you see that?
And it is about will, right? Because it's the same thing with Darwin and Salah, right? It's probably the biggest difference between those two guys failing is like Salah gets the pass because he's given us everything, and Diaz doesn't because he's given us nothing except, 2 trophies now. Well, I don't know if you'd call the Community Shield a trophy, but
I would. We had a horrible season that year, so I'm counting whatever I can count.
But it could be something, and I get what you're saying about like the aloofness while they play. But here's an entomology lesson. So like flies, the reason it's really hard to hit flies is because they see things quicker, right? So it's almost everything's in slow motion to them because they can react faster than you do. Basically, the reason like cats can evade getting hit by a snake when they're fighting snakes. And there's something about that, like good players like them. Like one of the best players I ever played with, I know he's not on here because he's a Manchester United fan, but Kevin Ortega, I played with him in college. And he was just like that. His whole life was almost as if he was in slow motion. Like the ball came to his feet and he was just like, eh. But like every pass he made was perfect. He could shoot the ball. He could take corners. He could take free kicks, and just one of the best players ever. But like the world slowed down when the ball was at his foot because he was so good, because he was so confident. And maybe that's what you get, because Verge is one of the best, like you said, one of the best center backs to play the game. And hopefully Gravenberch becomes one of the best center midfielders to play the game.
Damn, you're nicer than most people that I have the show with. Like I get shit for Gravenberch every time. Like you're easily the nicest one, Gordon. But I'm sorry to cut you there, but go ahead.
No. It's just there's something about having the confidence and like the calmness on the ball and the strength to block people off that like allows you to play slower, which is definitely really frustrating. And then when you couple it with like our heroes on Liverpool for the last 10 years, Mane, Bobby, Salah, like those guys play frantically. They're throwing themselves at everything. Mane would come all the way back to the line and make a tackle. And it's like, you don't see that. It doesn't mean that they're worse players. It just means they play at a different tempo. And sometimes when everything is going wrong, those are the guys that you're picking out and looking at.
Absolutely. And Sparky, just in time. I was waiting for this. The typical Gravenberch shade, and you know what? It wouldn't be a Wednesday show without Sparky throwing some Gravenberch shade. Cersei here says, I think VVD being a defender makes what he does look cool. Yes, he looks really cool. Expect attackers to be like Mane and Salah, or we can fairly compare, right? But then the thing is, Gordo, it's what we're used to under Klopp's system. So when we kind of have an outlier like Gakpo, who looks so cool and composed, it looks a bit off. But then that doesn't necessarily, like to your point, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not effective. So I guess we'll see, right, next year. But, the prediction time is usually, saved for the end of the show. But who do you think Arna is going to go with, I guess, before we move on to the next topic to start? Let's say Liverpool's first competitive 11. Who do you think he's going on that left side?
Probably Gakpo. And I still am the whole, they're both Dutch, right? And so like
fair. I always forget. Yeah.
Not only is he like a Dutch coach, like and coach is very Dutch, but like he's also was brought up through the system. So he'll know the way that those guys have been brought up, which I guess speaks well for Gravenberch too. So hopefully that works in his favor. But there has to be, in a very unfamiliar setting, right? Because he's never been out of the Dutch league, right? He was at AZ first, and then he went to Feyenoord. So like he's never coached outside of Holland. So for him to come to a different country, he's going to start grabbing for stuff that's familiar. And Gakpo is one of the most familiar people he'll know. So I think that he will definitely start on the left. Now, does that change and evolve as he learns the country, as he learns the style of play in the EPL? Sure. But Gakpo probably is a shoo-in because he's Dutch.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm going with Gakpo too, in case you guys didn't, if my comments the last week or so to clue you guys in. And Bickler here with the excellent segue of who does the dirty work defensively, like Mane did. He shares a last name with one of our hosts. Yes, and I'm gonna go to that, Gordon. As much as we hate to talk about transfer rumors, right? But we got a tournament going on. Obviously,
Sammy Lee.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Like, obviously, the news came out sometime over the weekend. I was a bit late to it, but after reading throughout the entire story, it seems like Liverpool and Anthony Gordon, there was a stretch where he was going to be joining the club, but then Liverpool said no because Newcastle wanted Jarrell Kwanzaa, which I guess is fair enough since we're stacked on that left side anyway, with Diaz still playing. Diaz still playing for the club, and like we said, Gakpo playing well, Nunez being able to play on that side, and Jota as well. But when you saw this, Gordon, what was your initial reaction, and how do you think if let's say he was to come, right? We are seeing a lot of rumors and talk that his head has been turned because the candy has kind of been dangled out already. He's just like, I like the taste of this, right?
Yeah.
So he kind of pictures himself in a red shirt now. So obviously it fulfills the homegrown requirement, but then in terms of the fit and comparing him to what we have in that position, the Gakpos and the Diaz, what do you think about maybe Gordon playing in the team?
Yeah, Sparky says what I was going to say. Yeah, there's just something about a turncoat that I don't like, right? And it's a great player, but there's a handful of players that I would never want in a Liverpool shirt. I don't know if he's quite at that level yet, but there's just something, and I do know, there's that middle ground of Newcastle, but in my sense, there's just something I can't get over about Everton. I do think he's a little bit of a dirtier player. However, we've had some dirty players that we've absolutely loved. Like the Suarez is like you said, who if he didn't play for us, we would absolutely hate him. But the fact that he played for us, we absolutely love him. So he might fit into that role. He's definitely a quality player. I still don't know if I'd want him. Now, he joins the team and, puts his boot through a couple of them and does some assists. I'll definitely change my tune, but it doesn't sit well with me.
Bickler going with the pragmatic side here, which I can understand. I kind of looked at it more from this perspective, Gordo. He hates the theatrics, sure, but then when he's playing for your team, you understand why he does it. Can be ironed out, direct, does the dirty work. Better production than Diaz, mind you, I believe. I remember seeing his numbers, and in lesser games, he's practically reached Diaz's numbers over 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons at Liverpool, because his first season was kind of. Although to be fair, that is a bit. There's a bit of question for those numbers because Diaz missed a bit through injury 2 seasons ago, and he is a boyhood red, Gordon. But then I totally understand in terms of the aesthetics of being a former Everton player. We never liked him, but then he was a Liverpool fan. In terms of what he can produce, still a young player. How much does maybe pragmatism play here, you feel, over the sentimentality in terms of okay, Michael Edwards sees this deal, right? He sees the possibility of it. I guess my question is, how much do you think is he entertaining it? In terms
and
of
the fact that it won't go away tells me 2 things. One, they're very interested in it, right? Because even though a flood of negative stories comes out, it's now looking like the tide's turned. Those rumors don't go away. So I see that they're definitely interested. The second part of it is that it probably says that somebody's on their way out because, like you said, we're overstacked over there. So you're either looking to slot them in a totally different role, which I wouldn't recommend. We've seen, how that's happened with a few of the players that are already currently trying to get into the left wing spot. It tells me that somebody's on the way out. I don't know who, but somebody's probably looking to make a move, or they're looking to make a move. The only thing that I say against that is what we said before Euros started, right when they basically season ended, we announced slot. Is those guys are usually quick to the draw with who they want. They don't really mess around. Anyone that we've seen kind of linger in the news just never comes to fruition. It's basically, we get a lot of these who the hell is that? Oh, they're already taking photos in a Liverpool shirt. Okay, well, I guess we'll find out who he is later. So that's my only thought behind that is it's been in the media for a long time, so that tells me the interest is there, but it's almost starting to stale out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what to feel about it, but they're definitely not. Those guys do not take into account of like who he played for and everything. If he's right for the role, they'll take him, and we'll end up loving him if he does well.
Right, and Cersei says McMahon played for Everton and became a legend. Yeah, there are those cases, and Sparky here. Normally rumors don't lead to anything. Yes, but then Gordon has the reputation of forcing things if his mind is set on it. So it's definitely a piece of news that's going to be one to watch over the next few weeks, because he's definitely a player that can be serviceable for us, especially under a manager like Slot, who's like great at developing players. And not to kind of grind your gears, Gordo, because I know you're quite passionate about this, but I'm gonna have to go there. I don't know if you saw this. I'm sure you've caught this, and we don't have we have a little bit left. We have a little bit of time left, but since this is the only show of the week, I'm willing to go the distance because I feel like
I gotta pull myself together for this.
Yeah, you have quite a few things to say here. So for those who don't follow, the U.S. men's national team is out of the Copa America, and in the most hilarious fashion. So their coach here was telling them to focus up on a set piece. Seconds later, the set piece led to Uruguay's winning goal. But then that's just a moment in isolation, Gordon, because, listen, there's a ton of conversation about the team. I don't follow them as much as you do, right? So I think you're the perfect gentleman to ask for this. I guess my question is, before we get into it, can it get any worse than it is right now? Can it get – is this rock bottom, you feel?
No, it's not. It's not rock bottom. It's an organization that is stuck in transition, and it has been stuck in transition now for probably a decade, and it needs to be a huge shakeup. One of the things that I was talking about with like my friends group is because it's the only thing we agree on. I've got a lot of like Arsenal and Man United fans, so this is like about the only thing that we can all come together on and bitch together. So it's what other team has so much, and I use the term like rah-rah, so they're like, yeah, they're hyping up the team, right, who hasn't achieved anything. Our media is so far up their asses about everything, and they haven't achieved anything. There's like, look at England, like the media rips them apart, the Dutch media rips the Dutch team apart, and they've achieved things, right? They're like a team that is expected to win. The USA is not expected to win. I know that the media doesn't play the game, but it affects the thoughts of the team, and that affects the people on the board, the people that make the decision. All that stuff comes into play, and you can't move forward if everyone's happy with going to a knockout round and getting your asses handed to you by the Dutch in the first knockout round of a World Cup, and everyone goes, great tournament, that was awesome. Now, for the team they had, and for how good the Dutch national team was, that is an achievement, right? And you could look back at that and go, for where we are right now, that's great. But we've got a World Cup on our soil that we need to get better for. So what tweaks do we need? That's over. We did great with what we had. Let's move on. This is essentially the same team. There was a comment in the commentary that was basically like, I'd like to see how Uruguay comes out and plays this second half, knowing they don't need 3 points. Listen, I got fucking news for you. Nobody plays the U.S. men's national team expecting not to win. No big team. There's no team that goes out there like, guys, we don't need to go very hard to play. And that's the mentality of the organization. It's like, we think we deserve the authority to have Uruguay be like, guys, let's not stress ourselves out and give up a goal here. Because Uruguay aren't thinking that. The Uruguay are going, we could probably win this game 2 or 3-0. Right. And so that mentality has to switch before anything. I think we have the players to be a little better. This was the first team that we feel that that entirely played in Europe and didn't play in the MLS. And I know Alexi Lalas at the end of the game was like, the MLS aren't to blame. Well, yeah, they are. For the last 20 years, they've kind of been holding a lot of players back. So I still think that they are to blame because we still have the MLS mentality. But I think we need to continue to build on those guys. And I think we need to be a little stricter with, our expectations and a little more, if we want to push to the next level, we can't be like, yeah, we can go out and lose 3-0 to the Dutch. It's like if you're not expecting to win the game, how is the program supposed to move forward? You're just okay with being here. And then when we get the results like that, the coach, yes, everyone does look at the results, right? The fans look at the results that matter elsewhere. Even the players sort of know. They probably go in at halftime and look at the score. That's fine. But you don't do it in the field, and definitely not the head coach to be like, guys, it's 1-1. We can go through with the tie. It's like, what do we like to change the whole dynamic? Because Uruguay goes up the other end and scores. Panama scores almost immediately because Bolivia is just terrible. Like, the whole thing was like, oh, it's 1-1. Now we don't have to play. Like, that's the mentality of it has to change. And I got so angry. I got so heated. I was watching it on the treadmill, and I like sped up the treadmill because I was just like,
I can imagine. And thankfully, my home country, the Philippines, is nowhere near in terms of qualifying for a global competition like the World Cup. Otherwise, I'd feel the same way. Sparky says the U.S. soccer has a very easy route to every World Cup. They wouldn't make it if they had to qualify in Europe. Well, yeah, only reason media hype. Yeah, for this particular iteration, I would probably say so. But what do you think, Gordo, about the easy route? Like, if we're talking about competence, this is a very competent squad.
Yeah,
like they can kind of show up and give anyone a game. It's that next step, right? And I feel like the reputation of the US, and by the extension the MLS, is a little overblown. Like, they kind of put them in the going like, hey, Farmers League or whatever, like to catch that old Farmers League reference I made, right? or some shit like that. But you look about it, you think about it, like this, like you mentioned, this club is comprised primarily, no, not this club, this team, this starting 11 was comprised primarily of players who played in Europe. All of them played in elite European league. So there is some talent there. So you mentioned mentality. Do you feel like this level of delusion is because they've kind of reached that stage where, we already have the players that are good enough to make the European leagues, to kind of make ourselves, a little bit of a standout there, because Pulisic, I believe, is doing okay at Milan, right? You have these guys who are doing all right. But I guess my question is this arrogance, where does it come from? Is it because our other leagues are heavily publicized and stuff like the NBA, the NFL, and we know that we can just flip the switch, right? And then our soccer is just gonna be just as good? Do you think it's that kind of deal?
Oh, it's the most American. When I watch the U.S. men's national team, it's the most American approach to anything, right? It's like,
right, that's true.
Like we won a couple world wars, so now we're good at every sport. It's like, you get that sense that like the U.S. feels like they are on the same stage as England and Brazil, and like, where are you? Yes, globally, sure, the name America is very powerful. We're probably one of the top 3 nations in the world for GDP and all that good stuff, but like that doesn't come into play for soccer. And I don't think that we as Americans can get our head wrapped around that. Like, it's just impossible for us to feel like we aren't like the USA in the Olympics for playing basketball, right? It's just like we have a shot because we're America. Like, no. Really, the biggest problem is not the MLS. The biggest problem is the fact that it's pay to play here, and we shoo our possibly our best players out because they can't afford travel, they can't afford the coaching, they can't afford the uniforms. It's disgusting. When Ibrahimovic was over here playing for the was LAFC?
Galaxy.
Okay, it was the Galaxy. When he was over here playing, he said he was disgusted putting his kids into soccer because of how much it cost. The amount of players, when you look at players that come up like Firmino and even Diaz, who have these stories of like I think was it Sadio Mane who like had to go across
had to go
his state lines, like
he had to go to France, I think, leave his family in Senegal. Yeah.
In Senegal, he was like traveling 6 hours on a bus to play with the best team, like both ways. Like, it was one way was 6 hours, and he was doing that 3 times a week. And it's Mane. Now we get Mane from that, and here it doesn't happen because it's literally like $2,500 to play for a good coach over here, and the best players can't play. And we also lose, I feel like we lose a lot of players to like basketball and football and stuff like that, a lot of athletes, but we do turn a huge number of players away because they can't afford it. And until that changes, you're not going to see a change because you're just going to get a bunch of rich boys, which is very much has the U.S. mentality to it too, of like, we're better than you because we're richer than you.
Yeah, and pretty much everyone here echoes the same thing. It's cost. Yeah, I have a cousin with my uncle who pays thousands to get him to play in a club team where there's so much politics. When he tells me about it, it's absolutely maddening. I'm just like, okay, but isn't the goal here just to win?
Yeah.
Right? No, it's all about whose kid is playing in the starting 11. It's all about whose kid's taking the free kicks and stuff like that. I'm just like, yeah, this is just it's a personal thing with me. Like, it's what I see on my daily. But then if you're looking about it, it's like a microcosm of the entire system of why it's so flawed. Like, having to see my cousin and my uncle pay thousands of dollars just for them to play a sport that just needs a ball.
Yeah.
Just needs a ball in an open space.
Yep, right? A ball and two sweatshirts on the ground. That's all
right.
it needs. And it doesn't even really need to be a ball. I mean, how many stories have we heard where they, like, tape up a newspaper with string? It doesn't even need to be a ball.
Yeah. So he says that was Salah Mane run away from his village. Well, the thing is, like, Mane's story is it's pretty similar too. So the point is, these guys had to graft, had to fight, had to claw to get where they are, and you see that in their games in terms of like how they approach it, the desire, the passion, and the willingness to win. That might be lost on some of these players. I'm not saying all of them, right? I'm not saying all of them, but the fact that, piggybacking off your point, Gordon, where, as a kid, you're fortunate enough to be in the position where your parents managed to afford it, in a way that, that situation of you not having to scratch and claw to be in that position could be working against you in a way. I'm not saying that that's 100% the case, because in England there are players like who come from middle class families or whatever who manage to get to the top too. It's not 1,000% the case, but it definitely plays a part, right? Especially since that's probably 90% of the U.S. soccer base. Right, that's probably 90%. So in terms of variety, in terms of diversity and dynamics, yeah, that's a big mishit for the U.S. team.
In college, I did this work studies program, and it was basically I was playing for St. Louis University at the time, and so in order I needed to do, it was like service hours, but I got paid for it, but I needed to do something in the community. And it was like an after-school program to help kids, who basically their upbringing wasn't right. They didn't have parents at home or whatever after school, and they're just kind of wandering the streets in St. Louis, which there's certain parts of St. Louis that are not very safe. So it was more of like a safety net, kind of do some, like, help them with homework, that kind of thing. But my job was to teach them how to play soccer. And these kids have never played soccer before, right? And they, not something that was brought up with them or even shown on TV or anything. They've never seen it. And some of these kids were phenomenal. And I feel like, I know that some of those kids don't grow up and they don't become world class, but we are missing a huge chunk of athletes by not putting it everywhere for free.
Right. And to your point about world class, sometimes you don't even need world class. Sometimes you just need a solid player. Right? Which player in the US could you say is truly world class? Like, you'd say Pulisic is good, but not exceptional, right?
No,
listen, we just need some studs here who have the potential to be world class, not necessarily a Jude Bellingham or something. We just need some guys that we can, which I do believe we have, right? We do have a decent squad, like I said, competent squad. It's just everything that goes on behind the scenes. But yeah, listen, if we made the show totally about the U.S. men's national team, kind of like
I'd be very angry.
Yeah, I think Gordon here would go for the next 2 hours. So let me kind of divert that away into more happier things here. Where is that link? There we go. Look at our boy there, Joel Matip. After 8 years, 201 appearances, 11 goals, and 5 trophies, Joel Matip's LFC career officially ended. That was on June 30th. So obviously that was not covered, I believe. That was last Sunday. And sorry, I scrolled down there. In terms of the Klopp exit, guys like Matip, and to a lesser extent, Thiago was kind of overshadowed by Klopp leaving. But, for those 8 years, Matip was arguably our second best defender. And I felt like we didn't really give him enough props here on the show. And, people at the club didn't give him as much props as I feel like we should have. Listen, you got that celebration at the end of the final game of the season. That was more about club, right? So I guess if we're talking about CBs, Gordo, probably what the doctor ordered alongside Virgil van Dijk. He just had some seasons where he really got, unfortunate with injuries. But overall, in terms of free transfers, he has to be right up there, right? In terms of bargain for your money kind of deals. And it's a shame that we're going to be looking to replace him now for someone, with a similar skill set.
Yeah, and he's one of those uniquely Liverpool stories, right? Because I don't think he was going for free. I don't think anybody was looking at any big clubs, at least. I don't think that he would have made a starting 11 at any of the 6 big teams at first. But Klopp made him. That system. He just believed in the system. He was, like you had said earlier, with like, you don't need a world-class player, you just need a solid player. And that was Joel Matip, reliable when he wasn't injured, of course. But like somebody that, if you go back and think about how you felt about getting Joel Matip to when he leaves, even like when he played his heart out and ended up, costing the own goal against Tottenham, and everyone's like, it could have been anybody but Joel Matip. Like, why did it have to be Joel? Because we ended up falling in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such a Liverpool story of like taking this guy that probably was towards the end of his career in terms of like big teams, probably would have faded into obscurity in either a mediocre first division team or definitely a starter in a second division team. And he won how many trophies? 8, did it say? Was it
8?
I
believe 8. Yeah, it said.
So it's just
5 trophies. Well, 5 trophies.
5 trophies. So, yeah. I mean, tell me another club that you get that where like he just becomes a cult hero and kind of like totally gets Liverpool and understands the culture, understands what's expected to him on the field, and definitely will be missed.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I had to plug him in here because I didn't realize that, oh, hey, like, yeah, he's gone. It's just such a shame. And I guess if we're talking about Matip moments, there are quite a few, right? Like if we're talking about some of his best moments in the Liverpool career, what would you say is your favorite Joel Matip moment? Obviously, he's like a memeable kind of guy, and I felt like it's a perfect opportunity to pick one of these out because of his personality. I would say a very underrated one is I don't know if you guys remember this when we played in the Champions League, and I think it was against Milan or whatever, or was it a year ago before that game? We were celebrating a goal, and then he slaps Jordan Henderson at the head, and then and Hendo like turns around like incredibly angry because obviously I think the slap was a bit hard, and when he realizes it's Matip, he just kind of eases off. But yeah, it's just an indication for his character, and like in terms of a non-football moment, I think that's my favorite moment for Joel Matip, Gordo. What do you have one in mind?
He's so like non-football moment. Liverpool always does those like behind the scenes thing where like they either like hand out there's always like a 12-minute video like once a month or whatever, and he's always in it. He's always smiling, and whenever they pan to him, he's always like either talking to like the lunch ladies or like the kit man or something. Like, I just felt like he brought that energy of like he was someone who really appreciated where he was and what he'd achieved, and like every day was like a thank you to everyone that's made that possible. But I think my favorite moment from him, and I can't remember, I think it was either Newcastle or Brighton, and I don't know why I'm getting those two teams confused, but he goes on 2 runs in that game. This was maybe 3 years ago because we were playing in the now I'm going to try and describe a kit, so just excuse me. But it's the collared one that we ended up winning a couple things in. And he goes on the run, and it's at Anfield. The whole crowd's going nuts. He beats 2 players. He gets the 18-yard box and just puts up the weakest shot of all time. It's just he hits the grass first, and it goes like wide, and like he's laughing. Everyone else is laughing, and then he gets the ball again, and he looks up, and he like kind of does a couple touches forward, and then I don't know, maybe it was Henderson like calling him forward, but like it like opened up for him, and then he just like took the run again, and he ends up. I'm pretty sure he got tackled in the second one, but you saw him like he even like had a smile on his face. Like every moment for him was just a good time. So
yeah, and yeah, that's a great thing to bring up actually, because if we're thinking about the strategic side of the team, we're gonna miss that kind of CB who can actually carry the ball between the lines and serve as like a decoy when we face low blocks. And I guess this is a good segue to my final question on this topic, Gordon. Do you think we need to get someone. I mean, we obviously need to get someone, right, as another CB as cover. But does that CB need to be someone that replicates Matip's skill set, or do you think someone like Kwanzaa could be that guy who can? Because there are moments last year, especially towards the end of the year, where we were facing some low blocks, and he did try carrying the ball forward, which didn't look too bad. There were times where he didn't know what to do with it when he got to a certain point. But then he is still young. He still has time to develop. He kind of has the same frame. He could be stronger, Kwanzaa, than Matip. But do you think we need to go out, because obviously we were linked to the Italian guy, Calafiore, I believe, who has a similar style. Do you think we need to go for someone with a Matip build, or do you think we should just try and develop Kwanzaa?
No, because I think we have the skill set, and I think like Matip's one of those players that like you could probably get. He's a dime a dozen in terms of quality. I think what he brought to the team, that's kind of the X factor, was like the locker room presence, like being a leader. Maybe not in like terms of like being a general, like Trevor says, but more or less like, you know, just the energy. There's always, I'm not going to say he was a clown, but like very much like a jovial person, and maybe kept him like kept everybody level. You know, when things were down, you could probably turn to Matip and he'd have a smile or something funny to say, because he's always joking around on the sidelines and stuff. Like there would always be Klopp, and he'd do it like, and they, in the back you'd see like Matip like, you know, laughing. So I think he was like, I think that's his X factor, and you can't really replace that. You can't like go out and buy a player specifically for that. It just has to be someone that kind of occurs naturally. And I do think we have the center backs that we have enough center backs, I think, that can cover what he did for us on the field. But like Sparky says, I think, number 6 is probably our main circle right now.
Yeah, and I have to spotlight Trevor's brilliant comment here. Not every player needs to be a general. Grunts like Matip makes the wheel go. Very, very well said, my friend. Kind of, you know, pivoting towards Matip here. We have a new sponsor. This was set by Cersei a while ago. Liverpool confirmed the groundbreaking new agreement as club officials chase £300 million target, and we've added Husqvarna. I think I pronounced that right.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Right. And so they are one of the global leaders in smart mowing and robotic technology, and we'll see them become the official groundskeeping partner of Liverpool. And I'm highlighting this because it kind of brought me back to what you said a few months ago.
The tractor.
Having a tractor, where it just made me laugh. But then, hey, at least this one kind of is valid in terms of its needs. You know, ground. Yeah.
You need to cut the grass. I don't know if you need to till a field at Old Trafford.
Yeah, it's funny because and shifting from this a bit, I'm kind of bringing this up because we don't have as much to cover, and there have been some shouts. I don't know if you're on Twitter/X a lot, Gordon, where people are wondering why the club hasn't really been moving yet. Where obviously we see the likes of Chelsea already have signed 4 players and stuff like that. Obviously it's a rebuild on their side, but with us it's more of like going with what we have. Maybe a few minor tweaks in there, here and there. Does the lack of activity worry you, or are you just like, now we have a decent squad, like we'll let Arne sort things out when he can?
Well, 2 things. I think like one that you said, that Chelsea's in a rebuild, and they've spent $1 billion in 3 transfer windows. So like that, their activity doesn't concern me. They're like a kid with $100 in a candy shop. They'll just like buy the first couple of things they see and realize they don't have any money left. So they don't bother me. I think too, like with Slot being on vacation, I'm sure they probably wanted to bring him in on a lot of transfer stuff. And then the tournaments all started when he, you know, like we were in the middle of a tournament when he gave his first interview, and it seemed like that was probably his first day at the offices. You know, he said that in the interview, he said he was talking like every day with the owners and everything and kind of getting the game plan up. But I bet they really weren't doing anything and wanted to respect the fact that he needed to get settled in before they started making moves. And then as a club, you really don't want to step into the international scene and, you know, mess that up, because oftentimes the managers of the national teams will ban crazy things, like, you can't bring your family, or your cell phones have to stay, or like you'll get kicked off the team if you talk to, that kind of thing. So there might be some stuff in place, and you just kind of want to give them their space. So it doesn't necessarily bother me. I do think we have a squad that can probably compete without pieces. We definitely need pieces, but I think we can compete at least, because we've got a couple of weeks for the beginning of the season for the window to close. I just don't want it to be a scramble buy, right? If you're not going to buy anyone, don't buy anyone, but like don't buy people to buy people at the end when the window's closing and all of our targets have been sold off to other teams. So I'm not too worried about it.
We're going all voice of reason here, people. It's probably best. Otherwise, we'll go insane thinking about the possibilities of next year. But on a closing note, Gordon, obviously this is going to be the last morning show, people, until the 8th of July, where Timucin is going to be back from vacation, hopefully with a renewed constitution after yesterday's Turkey game. I don't know how he took that. He was commenting a while ago, so he seems fine. So
he went to the beach.
Right. That'll be the next morning show. But for the sake of going out on a prediction, the Timucin tradition, obviously we talked about this a lot, the Euros bracket here. So give me your predictions for each of these matchups, Gordo. Who is making the semifinals from each side? And feel free to elaborate as well.
Yes, I think it's going to be Switzerland and the Dutch. And I think it's going to be Germany based on nothing more than experience. Spain's still a young side. They're really good, but there's sometimes in those big matchups, everything gets bogged down because of the amount of talent on the field, and experience wins out. So I'm going to say Germany. And then France, just because I don't want to see Portugal get anywhere near the semifinal. And there's another big tournament. I don't know. I know that we've got a couple of expats on the chats here. So July 4th, I don't know why Richie Sunak picked July 4th to hold the elections, but England's got some big prime minister elections coming up. So hopefully we see some good results there when we come back on Monday.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I would probably go same as you, with the exception of, I think England's luck is going to continue to pull through. I think the Dutch take them out. I feel like they're going to be backs against the wall. I actually think they're going to go 1-0 down, and then they rely purely on individual brilliance from a Kane, from a Bellingham, from a Foden or something to bail them out again. But yeah, I mean, based on your predictions, I feel like you're probably saying England's luck runs out by the next game, and that's gonna be interesting to see, definitely.
They have to change their tactics if they want to beat Switzerland, and we haven't seen it in 4 games. So I don't have much confidence, because I think Switzerland will overwhelm them early.
Right, and the media attention after England get eliminated is going to be absolutely insane. Yeah. I'm all for it, especially if Trent is not playing. Right, we're all for it. Sparky says Turkey will be out by the next time the morning show is on. Thankfully, Tim is on the beach now. He didn't see this, but listen, if the Turks manage to pull one against the Dutch, like I said a while ago, I wouldn't be surprised. They seem like a very resilient squad as a casual looking in. But yeah, we didn't really cover too much about the Copa America and stuff, but then because we're out of time. But then pretty much we've got a bit of football holding us together before before we get back to club stuff. But and we've gone quite a bit here, 1 hour and 13. This is the only morning show though for the week. So
we have to pack it on.
Yeah, we had to pack it in. I mean, we could have gone longer, people, mind you, if I just let Gordo loose to talk about the U.S. men's national.
Yeah, thank God we're not talking about Copa anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are probably going to get into that a little bit with Ditbox, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't yet, subscribe to our Patreon. Any tier helps. The lowest tier, the highest tier, we'd appreciate you, whatever, as long as you try and contribute, help us out. You'll see things like, Gordo's podcast, Ditbox, alongside some other shows with Timucin, playing some games with Matouche, video games, Football Manager, seeing us, if you're a fan of us, which is surprising, right? But then listen, if you are, we appreciate it anyway. So go and check out our Patreon. They're going to be on the links for this broadcast. But if there's nothing else, Gordo, I appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, holding the fort. We're holding the fort here, the Wednesday show. And for everyone who tuned in, again, just the housekeeping. Please like, please subscribe. As Timucin says, grab someone by the ear, right? He says, he says ear,
throat,
right? Not nose. Yeah, the ear, right? Like grab
Grab
someone
by
by
the
the Oh, the throat. Okay. Okay, since we're the ones doing it, all right. Grab someone by the throat, push them up against the wall, and go like, why are she subscribed to American Scouting? These guys are fun. I promise. The content here is okay, but it's more of the vibes. It's more of the vibes. Like the vibes are unmatched. But yeah, if again, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you, and tune in tomorrow to the Thursday show for more American Scouts, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.